welcome all to this webinar. Thank you for attending. On behalf of Inetum Realdolmen and Eperi, we want to welcome you to this session. So let me start by a quick introduction. Then we will explain you the solution itself, the architecture, the solution, how it works, and do a demonstration of it, and in the end a Q&A. So it's although it's a rather small group, I propose that if you have questions, in fact, that we take them at the end. You can put them in the chat so that we don't miss them, that we don't forget them, and if necessary, we will answer questions after the session by email or calling you in a one-to-one back, etc. So that is always possible. This session will be recorded because we already got the questions from people that could not attend to get a copy of the recording. So we will share it afterwards. And as I understand, you're all on mute as we speak. So the questions we will try to open up the mute at the end of the webinar. So who is in this webinar from our side? So let me first be very impolite and starting by presenting myself. So my name is Erik Stuyven. I'm at Inetum Realdolmen a team lead within the Salesforce practice. So I'm sitting within the business applications division and then within the Salesforce practice. And I have a background in CRM, in Salesforce CRM since more than 7 years now. Then I have some of my colleagues in the call who can, I will present them because I think it's perhaps too difficult to switch always from speakers. So we have Maxim. He's one of our consultants within the Salesforce practice. He's a consultant busy with our test environment of the solution we're going to discuss, Eperi. So he will help us in follow-up questions. Sven, he's my peer colleague, team lead, and our lead technical consultant. So he has also been involved a lot in the discussion about data privacy and the technical aspects of that, and the Eperi solution. Then obviously we welcome Elmar. Elmar, perhaps you can present yourself briefly.
Welcome together. My name is Elmar. I'm the founder and CEO of Eperi, and as you can see on my name, there is a slight relationship with the company name, and that's why I'm here, and happy to present later on Eperi in much more detail.
Okay, thank you, Elmar. And then we have Iris. She's our sales. Unfortunately, she is sick, so I don't think she will attend today, but she will certainly play a role in the follow-up with you if necessary. So for the people that don't know Inetum Realdolmen, we are a broad system integrator. We are Flemish roots. We're the old Realdolmen in Belgium with more than 2,000 people in Belgium and more than 27,000 people in the Inetum group worldwide. As stated, we are a broad system integrator, so we do everything. We sell hardware, we sell training, we sell staffing, we do outsourcing, we do projects, etc. Within the business applications division, we do different solutions like Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP, custom development of applications, etc. So that's where our team resides within the Salesforce practice. But we are not only going to talk Salesforce today. Let's be open about that. So that's the very short introduction to Inetum Realdolmen. So why did we organize this webinar and why probably you are here? That's first of all because of data privacy, data security, and GDPR compliance is probably relevant for you. And we see that the importance of being compliant in that respect is growing. There is more and more pressure. It's nothing new anymore. People don't accept anymore that you are not aware about what you should do. And on the other hand, we see that cloud, the last 5 years, is growing enormously. We see that as a system integrator. So we see our customers migrating at a very rapid pace towards cloud-based solutions. Now, if you are going to the cloud, you will store data in the cloud, and the likelihood that you have personal data in the cloud is so very realistic, and that might be even not only just personal data, but also sensitive personal data that you store in the cloud. And if you are using one of the top cloud providers, they unfortunately are American companies. Salesforce is one of them, but also Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and others are all American companies. That means that your personal and sensitive data is in the hands of an American company. And that means, in reality, and we'll come back to that, that there is a possibility that the US government will get a copy of your data. And that's obviously a risk. You as DPO or as chief marketing officer or as data privacy architect or whatever, you should be aware about this risk, and you should consider what your mitigation measures will be against that risk. Is it worthwhile? Do you take the risk, or you're going to find a solution for it? And that's a risk you just have to face, and you have to consider the solutions. And that's what we're going to discuss today. Probably most of you know the US Cloud Act. That's the law in America that allows the American government to ask data to US companies. And as a result of the reaction of that, you got what we call the Schrems II arrest. And the Schrems II arrest basically says that because of the US Cloud Act, it is you have to take additional measures to protect your data, to be fully compliant. And one of these additional measures they suggest is that you use strong encryption of your data, but you have to use it before you transmit it to your US cloud provider. And the word before is very important in this regard. We had some local rulings in this respect. For example, the Vlaamse Toezichtscommissie, or the VTC, also gave a formal advice in that respect. They go even further. Next to encryption, they say that it is essential that you do pseudonymization of your personal and sensitive data. And again, the word, it has to be before you transmit the data towards a US cloud provider. And to do pseudonymization, then you need to build a local solution with a trusted third party locally. That's what I recommend. And then there have been some updates on the Schrems II ruling. And again, I think the important points we want to make is that in that respect, it's not the issue is not so much where do you store the data, but the focus is much more on where can the data be transferred in very specific use cases. So some people still come to us and saying, yes, but we have Salesforce or Microsoft on a local data center, so I am compliant. Unfortunately, it is not the case. The rulings in America are very clear that if you store your data in a cloud solution of an American company, regardless of where the data is located, the US government may ask to get a copy of that data. So, and it might not only be that the the government is asking for it. I'm giving an example in the case of Salesforce. If you have a 24/24 support contract with Salesforce, that means that US support people of Salesforce can get access and get copies of your data. So even if your data is in Europe, there is a possibility of data transfer to the US. So there are very specific cases, but the possibility is there, and you have to consider about do you take the risk or do you want to mitigate risk? We had in cases with the Flemish government a lot of discussions about this, just to set the scene. The Flemish government did a big RFP, let's say that started more than 2 years ago, looking for a CRM platform. They selected Salesforce as the preferred CRM platform, and they selected Inetum Realdolmen as the provider of the solution. So we are the middleman between the Flemish government and Salesforce. Yeah? So we manage the contract, we do the contract for them. So we are in fact the cloud provider for them, and Salesforce is our subcontractor in this case. Okay. Now, because of these issues we just mentioned about data privacy, we had a lot of discussions with the Flemish government, and in the end, we came to an approach where we defined together a series of technical organizational measures, TOMs, as we call them, which are measures, things you have to do to do enough risk mitigation for your data privacy. Like examples are, you have to set up the login restrictions. You have to set up multi-factor authentication. You have to make sure that you can have the audit trail capabilities and the event monitoring capabilities to see what happened with the data in your application, etc. You have to implement data masking for your sandboxes, for the people that are developing the solution, etc. And you have to do encryption and pseudonymization. Okay, so we have a whole series, I think there are 34 measures with regards to Salesforce in this case, which you have to take to assure enough risk mitigation. And for each of those measures, of those TOMs, we always defined if this is an optional measure, a recommended measure, or a mandatory measure. And that depends also on the data classification you are using. The data classification, that's a model defined by the Flemish government. So it's not something in general, it's just for the Flemish government. But they defined a 5-level data classification model saying, okay, this is public data, this is B2B data, or this is personal data, or this is personal and sensitive data, or this is really very critical data. And so we each time define not only per Salesforce product, but also per data classification level, if which measures are recommended, optional, or mandatory. Okay. And that's basically what we did together with the Flemish government to solve this issue. And Eperi, what we're going to discuss today, was a key component of the solution if you're really talking about personal and sensitive data. So what is Eperi? Eperi is, if I have to explain it high level, that's an encryption and pseudonymization gateway. So it's something that sits in between your user, who is using Salesforce in his browser, and the Salesforce backend in the cloud. It's a gateway, so it intercepts all your incoming and outgoing requests and makes sure that your data, if necessary, is encrypted and pseudonymized before it goes to Salesforce. So it enables you to be more GDPR compliant when you use US-based cloud providers such as Salesforce, Microsoft, or even your own custom-built applications, which are hosting on a US cloud data center somewhere. So you could use it also for those ones. That is in a high-level summary what Eperi is about. We'll come back more in detail. Eperi is perhaps not very known to you. It's not the biggest brand, the biggest known company name. It's a German company, to be clear, but and it's in a very niche solution, which is this very sensitive data protection solution, but is really recognized by the people that know the market, like Gartner, as one of the most major solutions with the, let's say, the best architectural approach to cover this solution. And we as Inetum Realdolmen confirm that when we were facing this challenge with the Flemish government, we went to the market and we were looking for solutions, and we've looked at several of those. And we also selected Eperi as the kind of the best of both worlds, a solution that really works, that has a good architecture, and that has an acceptable price. So you get good value for money, in fact. So that is my short introduction for today. With this, I'm going to hand over the word to Elmar, who will give you an introduction to the solution itself.
Right. Thank you very much. I will give you a little bit of a deep dive what Eperi is doing. In fact, the world is more or less simple. You as the customer, you do have your data in clear because you need to work with these data. And additionally, even if you do have the cryptographic key on your side, that means that you do control the key. Bring your own key and others are synonyms for that. Then if the cloud provider is doing the encryption, this is exactly the problem, because the cloud provider, also hackers and the three-letter agencies, NSA and so on, without any court decision, are able to get access to the data in clear. And that's exactly the problem of Schrems 2 that Eric has described before, or that is exactly why cloud providers from the US run very often into problems. What Eperi does is we are shifted that dotted line to the right side. That means the encryption is happening before the cloud instead of in the cloud. And that means that these cloud providers, hackers, three-letter agencies, never get access to the unencrypted data. They only get access to the encrypted data. And that's the logic of our product, because we think that no one can prevent that data gets stolen. But the Eperi gateway can make sure that stolen data is not usable. Because it's encrypted, it's technically speaking tokenized. That's what I will cover later on. And as Eric said, the Eperi gateway is a software solution working as proxy in the data stream. That means you don't have to install anything on the client side. You don't have to install anything on the cloud side. It's really something that is running in the network stream, and therefore it's a transparent solution, encrypting critical data prior sending it to the cloud. And that helps organizations to stay under full control of their data, making them GDPR compliant, and of course also compliant to other rules in the world. It does not only work for Salesforce, but as we are talking here about Salesforce, this will be the main topic here. It also works also for Office 365, for ServiceNow, even for custom applications that you do want to place into the cloud. It's a real multi-cloud environment that we are covering. Getting back to Salesforce, well, as you can see here on the left side, the user has the view of all data in clear text. He's able to see everything like before. On the right side, you see the view into Salesforce, even for an authorized user. The big difference is that, of course, critical data is not readable. It's still a valid object in Salesforce. So Salesforce does not even recognize that there is a difference, because the data itself are completely in the scheme that Salesforce wants to see the data in. But nevertheless, the critical data is tokenized, it's encrypted, and if data is not critical, like for example the title of a person, because you can't track back which person that is, even if you know his title, you even can leave that in clear text. And that's the magic and the power of the solution. Customers are defining, you are able to define what is my critical data according to the data classification that we have seen before. Of course, Inetum Realdolmen, and also together with us, we are offering best practices for that, and can help you for that data classification. But our solution is that flexible that you can define inside the Eperi gateway which data really is critical, which should be secured, and which data can be left open, and normally rule of thumb is around about 10 to 12% of the data that is critical, not much more, because mainly it's the PII data that we are talking about. Then I mentioned tokenizers and tokenization. What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, if here, for example, you have customer data, Michael Powers, an account number, a hemoglobin value, let's take that one, 4.5. If you encrypt 4.5, you get HGH whatever. So that means this is something where, well, you can't put that back into the application, because inside the application, only numeric values are recognized. So what the Eperi gateway is able to do is take a random number out of the space that this number should be in, for example, 3.2 as a random number, and place this as a placeholder into the application. Now, when the user accesses these data again, this 3.2 is taken out of the cloud. The tokenized value, or back again, tracked back to the encrypted value out of the database. It's taken, it's decrypted, and then presented to the user. So for the user, he works with 4.5, but inside the cloud, it's 3.2. And this also works for not only numbers, also for birth dates, for zip codes, for all of these nice functionalities. And that's the magic of our solution. And one of the special things that these tokenizers, these what is a valid entry, can be built inside the product by yourself, by Inetum Realdolmen, and you don't have to wait for Eperi doing this. Also, one of the big advantages of our solution is that the major functionalities are all available. So, for example, search, sort is there. How does that work? Well, the Eperi gateway keeps an index of the unencrypted data, and that means it's everything that we encrypt or tokenize inside the gateway. That will be also stored in the index, and that means if someone queries something, so there is a search request, then with help of this index, data can be defined. So the query will be modified, not saying, give me, let's say, Eperi, all accounts with Eperi. It's saying, well, give me accounts 1, 2, 5, 7, opportunities 20, 30, 17, and an end. You know where I'm coming from. And then Salesforce is compiling these data even without knowing what the search request was, getting the result set bad. Inside the gateway, they're decrypted, filtered, and sorted, and then returned to the user. So that means, we'll see that in the live demo, even if the data is encrypted, you're able to have the functionalities, the major functionalities from Salesforce over there. Also, as said, the gateway is running as proxy in the data stream. That means the protocols in the data stream are important for the gateway. And therefore, we are supporting desktops, Macs, Windows, web services, the web access, even on iPads, Android pads, and mobile devices, with Salesforce Lightning in the browser, with data loaders if you have mass data. Salesforce Mobile is, of course, also supported in the same way like web services are if you have a deeper integration. And that's because the protocols, the underlying protocols like HTTP, the Salesforce APIs, SMTP, and web services are supported. And that is where the gateways are running with the gateways, and then Salesforce data is intercepted, secured, prior sending it into the cloud. How does that look like? Well, let me quickly show you how that works. And here you see a special URL, and that's one of the things we call that, the standard term for that is reverse proxy. The solution works as reverse proxy and forward proxy. Reverse proxy means there is a special URL, as you can see here, Eperi demo. And this Eperi demo URL is pointing to the Eperi gateway as a proxy. So that means you're working, and you can see all data in clear text via the gateway. On the other tab, we connect directly to Salesforce, as you can see here. And that means, yeah, well, you don't see anything. The data is encrypted. It's you don't have all critical data there. If you are authorized user, you can see all the accounts, you can track into the accounts, see all data work like before. Inside the cloud on the Salesforce side, well, account names are encrypted, things are tokenized, the critical data is not readable in clear text. Uncritical data are still in readable format, but everything else is really encrypted. And as said, you define what is critical and what's there. That, of course, works also for accounts. So all the Salesforce objects are supported there that are critical, and therefore you can select out of, as an authorized user, seeing everything in clear text. Again, on the cloud side, data is encrypted and tokenized, as we have seen on the screenshot before. Search is possible, so that means if you're an authorized user working through the gateway, you can use the standard search with the short result sets, but you also can go on the result page, seeing all the accounts, everything that is there can work from there. If you are on the cloud side without using the gateway, well, you don't find anything because data is encrypted, so the critical data is not there, and that's also a nice test that our solution is working and that Salesforce never has access to your unencrypted data in any way. There are a lot of special functions inside the Eperi gateway that helps to support all the functionalities inside of Salesforce. So, for example, just to give you a look and feel, how does the administration look like? If you are a user, work in your company with a solution, you perhaps will never see that. But as administrator, what the solution does, it connects to your Salesforce instance, to the metadata, reads out the data protection policy and all the fields and objects, and then you can easily add new policy elements by getting into the object. You see some things are yet configured. If you want to have some new fields secured, well, you just click on them, encrypt, tokenize the data as you want. You have different tokenizer profiles that you can use, also with custom profiles if you like to. All these functionalities are available, and you are managing that. So you are able to define which data, how to encrypt them, tokenize them. This is, for example, an example for the email tokenizer. You define on which email that should go. So here, talk.eperidemo.net. All these functionalities are available for you, and you are able to decide what a valid email format is. And you also have deduplication. That is something that is also supported. You also have selective protection. So that means in this aspect, if an account is a prospect, and that is something that you can see here. We have an account gene point, and well, if you have a customer priority that is special and also the type prospect, then data is not encrypted. So we can see that here. If we have a customer priority low and a prospect, then data is not encrypted. Everything else is encrypted. So let's trigger that. We set it to low. We set it to the prospect, and you see here it's an unencrypted data and everything else is encrypted. So special, for example, if you want to have this support for let's say special customers from different countries, European countries, for example, you can have them encrypted and everything else is unencrypted. So there is really a broad variety on possibilities that you can run with the solution. Also, validation rules are supported. So if you want to have special validation rules, because encrypted data is not the same like unencrypted data, but that's also something that is important. So for example, if you have an account and you're changing it to an address that is perhaps existing, and you want to save it, then you get the information billing country needs at least 3 digits, all these validation rules that you have seen in the background. They are still working, even though that the data is encrypted. Just give you an impression about some of the functionalities that are in Gateway. As said, there is much more to make it as convenient as possible for you to use the functionalities out of Salesforce that are very important, that are needed. And yeah, well, Eric mentioned it before. There are a couple of customers that are using the solution. Some of them even are references. So, for example, Deutsche Bank. They are using worldwide our Salesforce solution. They are also using our solution for a global data hub. That means data is stored in a central way in the cloud, customer data, and as they are concentrating all data in one location, they are able to do privacy preserving analytics. So that means keeping the privacy, on the other hand, being able to analyze these data. With UBS, we have a customer using our solution for test data management, especially also because of GDPR and PCI DSS compliance. And with BYD, this is a customer out of the IoT space. They are building cars coming out of China, and these cars are sending every 3 minutes tons of data into a Chinese cloud. And to get the EU admission for that car in Europe, the gateways are used. That means the cars are sending the data to the gateways. The gateways are anonymizing the customer data, the PII data, and only statistical data are sent to the Chinese cloud. And that's how they got the EU admission for their car. Deutsche Telekom, with 170,000 users, they are using our solution especially for Salesforce, but also for outsourcing. They come out of the space of civil servant data. They have a special law in Germany that these data are not allowed to be stored inside the cloud, and that's something where they need to use our solution. With Conitas, this is an example of customers using our solution in the public sector, especially for Microsoft 365 as a reference. And that's also when it comes to public sector, when it comes to cloud services, as Eric mentioned, that's very important that you do have the right and proper protection that you do need. And Daimler comes out of the data residency space, especially with Chinese cybersecurity laws. And we also do have customers using the solution for other parts in the world. Like, for example, if you have Russia, there are special cybersecurity laws. In the US, you do have special laws in California, for example, and other states. And our solution can be used to really comply to these laws. Just as a wrap up to give you some more information, I'm happy to hand over back to my colleagues from Inetum Realdolmen.
Okay, thank you, Elmar. So to wrap up, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but we did it in a very rapid and efficient way. So, but just to summarize a little bit the benefits of Eperi. First of all, it should be clear that Eperi is a German company, so it's a European company. They do not have any employees in the US. They don't have a subsidiary in the US. So in fact, US law is not applicable to them. So it's not that the US government can ask Eperi directly, so hand off us the data. They cannot do that. The most important point is that your data is encrypted or pseudonymized before it leaves, before it arrives in the cloud, before it arrives, and that's very important. So even if Salesforce in this example would be forced to give over your data towards the NSA, for example, if they are forced, they have to do it, but they will hand over encrypted data or pseudonymized data, so it will be useless for the US government. And we worked out the pricing with Eperi. So if you compare it to other solutions, like for example, Shield of Salesforce, which is also an encryption solution, but that is encryption in the cloud, not before the cloud. But pricing is comparable, so it's not that we are adding a lot of costs because of this. And what we thought that also was important is that you have one solution that does both. It does both encryption and pseudonymization. You can choose which fields, which objects, which has to be encrypted, which has to be pseudonymized or whatever. It's your choice. The key management is done by yourself, so you can select your own key management solution. and manage your keys yourselves. Again, your keys will not be in the hands of Eperi, will not be in the hands of Inetum Realdolmen, will not be in the hands of Salesforce or Microsoft. You will own the keys. And as shown very briefly, the implementation is rather simple and even changes afterwards. So because it has this templates-based architecture, it's basically a question of setting up your initial template and selecting of which objects, which fields, what needs to happen with it. So it's an easy solution to implement and to keep on running. So we think that are key benefits of this solution. So what is the role of Inetum Realdolmen in this? So we are a partner of Microsoft, of Salesforce, of SAP, etc. But we are also a partner of Eperi, which basically means that we are the reseller of Eperi licenses. So you can come to us and just say, I'm interested in Eperi, I need some licenses. We can offer you those, and for the rest, you're on your own. You can implement it yourself, test it yourself, etc. It's your project. Or Inetum Realdolmen can offer also your assistance with some other services. First of all, if you want to test it, we have a pre-packaged POC offering. So we have a kind of fixed price POC offering. So where you do, we go with you to a 2-month journey to test Eperi together with you, and so that we can test it on your application with your data, and you can play around with it, and you can test everything works correctly, etc. So we can help you with that. But we go further than just that. We can also offer you Eperi as a service in, let's say, 2 flavors. We can offer you an infrastructure as a service. So if Eperi you have to install on a hardware, on server somewhere in Belgium, in this case. So you need the hardware, you need the Linux operating system on it, you need the database on it, you need to have to do that. And if you don't want to buy all that yourself, we can offer you that as a service. So what it means is that we offer you the virtual machines to run this on. We install, if you want, Eperi on it. We configure the Linux, the database correctly, you open up the right ports, etc. So we make sure of that, and we run it. So we offer you a managed support on that if there would be issues with this environment. We offer daily backup. We offer the anti-intruder software installed and configured correctly, etc. So we all run that in our own data centers, the R-Cloud data centers that we have as a broad system integrator. So that's one service we can offer you. And if you want to go further, we can offer you what we call a starter kit. That's more a kind of start implementation or pilot implementation of Eperi. Again, where we say, okay, it's not just the infrastructure to run Eperi on it and the software is installed correctly and we keep on running it, but we go further. We do the first phase of the implementation for you. We select some objects, we select some fields, we encrypt them already, and we go through the process together with you so that you are quickly up and running and don't need to build all the know-how upfront yourself. We do that together with you so that you have the know-how to afterwards keep on running the solution if you want. And we can offer this also as a service if you want. That's basically the commercial part of this presentation, let's say it this way. So with that, we finished the presentation and the demonstration we planned, and we open up for questions. I don't know if there are any questions as we speak. And I know Belgians are not always. I see a raised hand of Niels, or Niels Deels. But you are on mute, so how can we? Yes, can you hand Niels speaking rights? Okay.
I think I have the speaking rights now.
Yeah. Okay, Niels, go
Great.
ahead. Perhaps you can present yourself briefly so that everybody knows who you are, and then just ask the question.
Okay, great. Just briefly on the DPO of the city of Hasselt, which I got the invitation through one of my colleagues. And we are probably looking to a system which is comparable to Eperi. And thank you very much for the presentation. It was very clear, but I have still some questions which are firstly regarded to Office 365. You mentioned that it is possible to use Eperi for Microsoft 365, like I don't remember the company, but is it also possible to encrypt, or I think it is encrypt documents instead of fields? So, for example, all the documents we have in our Office 365 of Microsoft 365 cloud.
Yes, and much more. So the functionality is similar, encryption and tokenization, that you know from Salesforce. So not only fields themselves are encrypted data for fields, also documents that you do upload into the Salesforce environment. The same works for Office 365. So all emails, all calendar entries, all the Teams chat messages, and also the files in these environments, but also OneDrive and SharePoint files are encrypted or tokenized before uploaded to Microsoft 365, making that GDPR compliant, because, you know, all over the world there is a big discussion, especially in Europe because of GDPR, about the privacy concerns that people and data privacy officers especially, of course, do have, and there is a clear saying also from the European Union about that.
Okay, great. The next one is related to that. If we, for example, encrypt all our documents within Salesforce or field of whatever, are there any performance issues? So does it have an impact on for the users on speed of the product?
So normally there is no user impact, as the encryption is faster than delivering the data into the cloud, because we don't encrypt everything. It's only the critical data that is encrypted. When it comes to files, of course, obviously everything needs to be encrypted. So there is kind of a breaking point at around about 300 megabytes. If you upload a file that is bigger than 300 megabytes, then you can get into performance issues, or let's say there is a performance impact. It's not really an issue. It's a performance impact, and that can be compared to SSL. So, you know, this transport security that browsers are offering, that is around about 20%, and that's the same with the Eperi gateway.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, from my point. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Maxim, a functional Salesforce consultant at Realdolmen. And Elmar, I was just wondering, so as an admin or as a regular user in Salesforce, we're going to use the Eperi gateway for the daily work. And as an admin, we'll set up validation rules, flows, and so on in the Eperi gateway. But I was just wondering, is there still something that we will do in the Salesforce actual encrypted org then, or will that be left alone and everything will be done through the Eperi gateway?
So you still can do backups, you still can work inside the Salesforce environment. So for example, writing Apex code, testing data, because as mentioned, not all the data is encrypted. So one of the nice functionalities of the Eperi gateway is that it's a field-based encryption where you can define which fields are critical. There's 10 to 12% of data that is PII data, for example, that is encrypted. Everything else is unencrypted, and there you can do whatever you want to, and of course work around there. And that of course helps also partners get access to these data, because they don't see PII data, but they can do their job, they can do their normal work, and that helps of course also for quality assurance issues, for tracking any bugs, because it's not only about the topic of GDPR, that is one driver, but the other driver is of course privacy in itself, and there is no need for partners to have access to the critical customer data. Why? It's not needed in most of the cases. Therefore, you can work directly with Salesforce doing your standard work without having PII access.
Okay. Yeah, you actually also answered one of my other questions. What if we need Salesforce support and they need access to the Salesforce environment? Then indeed they can access the encrypted environment. So it's indeed a good
Right.
one.
Because the identifiers, of course, inside Salesforce, these are technical identifiers. So as you know, every field, every special object has a unique ID, and that is something that you see in the URL also. And that is something that you have to give to the support of Salesforce in case you do need support there, and then they have the same access that you do have.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe just to pick up on Niels' question, when Niels talked about the encryption of documents, I was just wondering, what would that mean? Does it mean the title won't be readable anymore, or you can't open the document itself? Just to have an idea what that actually means.
Yes. So as a good consultant, I would say it depends. It's a configuration thing. So of course, the complete content of the document is encrypted. So when you have a Word document, for example, it's not only the content itself, it's also all the metadata in this document. So for example, who has edited this document, how long, perhaps any changes and stuff like that. All of that is encrypted. And if you like to, you also can have an encryption on the title of the document, but normally customers don't use that because titles normally are not that critical. A lot of things are configurable in the solution depending on your security needs and the privacy needs that you do have.
Okay, great. That's for me. That's it for me for now. Thanks for the answers, Elmar.
You're welcome. Once in a lifetime again, in every session, you have to say, Eric, you are on mute.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So one last question. Are there any other questions, thoughts, remarks, doubts someone have as we speak? I don't see any reaction. Okay. So if you would have any further questions afterwards, you can always contact us. You see on the slide there is an email address, an alias that is monitored, or you can contact me directly, and I will make sure that it gets your questions gets assigned to the right persons to give you an answer. We will share the recording and the PowerPoint presentation afterwards to all the people that attended, so you don't have to learn it by heart. So I think with that we are ahead of schedule, but as everybody is busy, I don't get a lot of complaints on that one. So I want to thank Elmar especially for his very clear and very quick presentation. I think it was a very crisp. And I would like to thank you all for spending your time with us. I hope it was useful information for you, and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you all, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.